My name is Gary Bell. I'm a data analytics architect with Covenant. I've been with Covenant now for over 10 years, and I've been doing Microsoft data analytics and BI for longer than that. So
thanks, Gary. My name is Gary Polinsky, second Gary on this presenter on this session. I am a senior consultant on the data and AI team, working with Gary for I think about 5 years now, and for many other years prior to that, working with data and AI back to I guess my start was Power Pivot in Excel. But I'm happy to be here and excited to kind of give you a peek into something that a lot of people don't know about. Semantic Link and Labs are Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs are aids for Power BI and Fabric developers like you all, admins, as well as data scientists. They provide access to and the ability to manage and kind of automate your Fabric items. By Fabric items, I'm referring mainly to kind of your reports and your semantic models. And what these tools do is reduce a lot of the task overhead. If you're familiar with working with REST APIs, there's a bunch of extra work you have to do just to get authenticated. And sometimes you have to look up GUIDs in order to be able to run your APIs. A lot of that is abstracted. In addition, as Gary mentioned, it does require some Python coding, but you really don't. As you'll see, you really don't need to be a Python coder to get started with this. It's really pretty nice. All of this, basically what it does is these tools provide our wrapper functions around these REST API calls. And they're very user friendly, as you'll see. All of these tools run in Fabric notebooks. If you're not familiar with Fabric notebooks, we'll give you an introduction to that here in a little bit. And you can use, and Fabric notebooks are a nice feature because they can be executed in a pipeline, so you can schedule and automate these types of things.
I don't know if anyone's worked with any of the Power BI APIs, but they've been available now for a number of years, and it'll just allow you to do things from everything from refresh a data model to add users. There are a number of functions there, and the APIs are great. And in fact, what we're going to work through today is really a bunch of technology or a bunch of functions that have been built, as Gary said, kind of around those. But one of the things that we're getting a lot of interest in, a lot of requests from clients right now is just trying to get their arms around their Power BI environment. Power BI has been around for maybe 7 or 8, maybe probably longer than that, almost 10 years now. A lot of organizations have adopted Power BI at some point during that time, and typically what we've seen is they've adopted it in a way that hasn't been very structured, at least at the beginning, and so they've given access to Power BI. People start building Power BI content, and then before they know it, it's kind of mushroomed a little bit on them. There's a bunch of workspaces that people may not, people being maybe on the IT side, may not be fully aware of. There's a lot of data sets and reports, and so some of these tools it can give you the ability to get a better handle on just what's there. So from a management standpoint, from a archiving or I'm sorry, just a kind of a discovery standpoint. There's not great ways to do this within the context of Microsoft's just standard kind of Power BI portal. So some of what we're going to talk about kind of speaks to those use cases.
So Semantic Link there is really geared towards data scientists. It provides access to tables, relationships, and measures, and allows you to perform operations actually on the data. So it's based on the SemPy library, and it has Microsoft support. Semantic Link Labs, which is geared more towards Power BI and Fabric developers and administrators. It provides access to reports and that kind of metadata that Gary was talking about your reports and models. It's based on the Semantic Link Labs library, which is an extension of the SemPy library. It's community driven. I think the gentleman's name who has been actively developing this is Michael Kowalski. He has been working on this for a while. There are over 300 functions in Semantic Link Labs, and they're organized around in specific areas. We're going to be focusing on the library, the report library, which provides access to provides functions for these Power BI and semantic models. So let's take a look at a few use cases. One is you get access, like we've been talking about here, you get access to report and semantic model metadata. You can find out about, what's the information about your semantic models, your tables, columns, measures, relationships, and usage patterns. So this is really valuable. By the way, there is in Fabric an admin monitoring workspace, which does provide some of that reporting, but this would allow you to kind of customize your ability to work with that sort of metadata in a customized way. You can manage and optimize Power BI reports and semantic models. Gary's going to provide a couple demos later that show you how to follow best practices and modify your reports and semantic models to better follow best practices, to optimize your semantic model in terms of its vertipack optimization. You can create or modify measure descriptions. These are becoming more and more important as we know that AI is often, your models are going to be more AI enabled when they're ready, when they have those measure descriptions to access. You can recover reports or models that you can't download from the Power BI service. And there are certain scenarios where a Power BI report is either too large, or there are other scenarios in which your report basically can't be downloaded anymore. With these tools, you can download sort of the skeleton of that report or semantic model and be able to continue working with it. You can identify and fix broken reports. You can identify broken visuals and fix them on the fly. You can clone and rebind reports. While Fabric does provide deployment pipelines to automate your movement of reports and semantic models through dev, test, and prod, you can clone and rebind reports with these tools that allow you maybe some more, custom, the ability to kind of customize your deployments and scale them.
And so
I'll show it. Go ahead, Gary.
What a lot of these help us accomplish is just being able to perform operations like these at scale. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get at a lot of these and perform a lot of these kind of functions that are mentioned here, kind of on a one-off basis in a lot of cases within the Power BI portal or within Power BI desktop. You can get to some of the metadata, for example, if you open up a model in Power BI. But with the tooling here, the scripting capabilities with the Link Labs in Python, it allows you to kind of plow through and do it at scale, maybe across your entire tenant, across an entire workspace, et cetera. So it just gives you, from an automation standpoint, just a more robust tool in your toolkit to perform a lot of these kind of actions.
Few more use cases. Gary mentioned how you could have this kind of burgeoning Power BI environment that's kind of grown over years, different developers creating different reports with their own design ideas. You can let's say you wanted to provide a unified organizational theme, or you could apply that theme across multiple reports, kind of giving the same look and feel to all of your reports. You can view report level measures and migrate to the semantic model. Again, in a kind of a longer, when you've had quite a bit of development and few different developers. They're sometimes creating their measures in their reports and not in the semantic models. This allows you to kind of consolidate and manage all of your measures up into your semantic models. You can identify lakehouse table. You can check the optimization of your lakehouse tables and optimize them. You can migrate, import, and direct query semantic models to direct lake models. Again, if you've been developing Power BI reports and you have most of your semantic models are import direct query, and then you move to sort of a more modern data warehouse where you now have a lakehouse and your semantic models in a lakehouse, you can migrate those import and direct query semantic models to your direct lake models and really take advantage of direct lake mode performance. And you can run various calculations. You can run DAX and perform other operations. Again, all of this can be orchestrated in a pipeline by dropping your notebook into a pipeline and scheduling it.
I'll mention maybe a couple others there as well, Gary, that weren't on our list, but user management can be done there at that level as well. You can again, this would be something that maybe if you had a person leave the organization and you wanted to remove access from all of the semantic models that person had access to, you could easily kind of use one of the endpoints here in semantic links that would go through and find all of the models that person had access to and remove them at that level. You could also then kind of think about using semantic link labs and some of the scripting here to automate the deployment of reports from test workspaces or development workspaces up to a production workspace. I know Power BI has some tooling around that with some of their deployment pipelines, but if you had more specific requirements or some use case that would kind of fell outside the bounds of what that can do, you have maybe more capability to kind of customize that using some of the tools like this as well. So we're just kind of scratching the surface on what's possible here. As Gary mentioned, they've got 300 plus endpoints that they've made available. It's, as he said, it's community driven, so those are being expanded upon all the time, especially in conjunction with Microsoft's evolution of their APIs. So we'll show you we've got a link here at some point, maybe at the end, to kind of the documentation online, and you can kind of scroll and scan through that list yourself. But again, there's a lot of capability here.
Right. So what do you need to get started? You have to have a Fabric capacity in order to create and run your notebooks. But you don't, not all of your entire environment does not have to be in a Fabric capacity. You can access items that are in standard capacity. You just have to have a Fabric capacity to run your notebook. You need, obviously, you need permissions to work to the workspace and to those Fabric items, to your reports and semantic models. The Python libraries must be installed. For semantic link, if your Spark version is up to date, that should be installed automatically. But for semantic link labs, you'll need to install that. I'll show you, and that can be done fairly quickly within your notebook, within your session in your notebook, or it can be done by setting up in a custom environment for that. And if you're running calculations against your semantic models, you're going to need access to those data sources.
So we were talking about, just before we jump into the demo, I think we'd ask up front about Fabric and whether your organization has a Fabric capacity. I was just trying to see the results of that. But the Fabric capacity is necessary, as Gary's about to show, at least to be able to run the notebook. So the way this is going to work is we're going to open up a notebook. We're going to create a notebook in a Fabric-enabled workspace. So just a quickly level set for those that may not be as familiar. Fabric is kind of the new, I should say kind of the evolution of Power BI. It expands the capabilities of Power BI from just simply reporting to more of your data lakehouse, data warehouse level analytics. And so one of those capabilities you get within a Fabric-enabled workspace is the ability to create notebooks. And notebooks allow you to write some of the Python code that we're going to show you here in a moment. The good news is if your organization does not have a Fabric capacity yet, and again, those can be assigned at a workspace level, much like a premium capacity, if you're familiar with that in Power BI. If you don't have one, Microsoft's still very generous in giving away a lot of trial capacities right now. So if you haven't signed up for one of those, you can sign up and get a trial Fabric capacity. And then again, the key is just to make sure that whatever workspace you're doing this kind of activity in is assigned to that Fabric capacity. So Gary, go ahead. You're gonna show some of this stuff as we jump in here.
All right. So I'm gonna provide a brief demo. And let's see here. There we go. And the purpose of this demo is twofold. I want to give you an introduction for those of you who don't know to notebooks. And then I just want to show how you can just get started with running some of these semantic link lab functions. So if you're not familiar with Fabric, you can go to any workspace, that Fabric enabled workspace, and you can, up in the top left, you can click new item, and you can filter all the items that are available for just notebooks. And I click on notebook, and I've created a notebook. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about each of these notebooks as I go over to my demonstration. So a notebook is really a set of cells. There are two types. They're either markdown cells, which are basically for comments like you see up here, or they are code cells. You can run these codes. There are any number of these code cells that you can create, and they can be run each of these code cells can be run individually, or they can be run in sequence. Your notebook can be attached to a data source, such as a lakehouse or a warehouse, but it's not always necessary. It's not necessary in this case with this use case that I've got here. To get started with this notebook, you have to begin a Spark session. You can begin the Spark session by creating a standard session up here, or I can kick off the Spark session just by clicking the run on this first cell. And to get started in unable to start a notebook session.
Hey Gary, quick question. So with the pip install, so are you saying that we don't necessarily have to like run this in a terminal like a pip install? This is straight through the browser itself?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
What's this? Sorry guys, we're running into a little bit of a demo nightmare here. It's not able to start a notebook session.
Refresh your browser real quick, Gary. I changed our capacity.
Okay.
So that could have something to do with it.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Come on, demo gods, help us.
Faith.
So what this is doing is installing the Semantic Link Labs package, and while it's as it's starting up the Spark session, and this basically installs this package for this notebook session. It's only active during this session. The next thing we want to do.
I'm sorry. I think that maybe to answer Tim's question, the sessions are spun up on execution. So every time you open one of these notebooks and start executing a code, you'll see that it goes through that 5 or 10 seconds where it establishes a session. What it's doing is it's setting up a Spark cluster kind of behind the scenes to make sure that it can essentially just kind of allocate the CPU resources necessary to start performing some of your actions. And it just runs for as long as your code's running, and then after about 30 minutes or an hour after you're done with it, it just kind of times out and goes away. But you will have to repeat that process of installing that, running that first command that installs the lab or the library there at the beginning.
And then just like a normal pip install, like if you went through the terminal, once you pip install it, you're good to go, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that.
So the next thing we want to do is import a kind of a sub package and a particular library. We want to import this report library within this Semantic Link Labs. The report library contains a lot of the functions that we want to use to interact with Power BI reports and semantic models. And I'm aliasing that with this REP so that anytime I reference it later in later cells, I don't have to type out senpai labs.report. I can just type rep. So the next thing I want to do is the kind of the fun part. Let me set that up by saying, giving you a scenario. I'm a report developer. I've been asked to develop a report. We've got a semantic model in a demo prod workspace called food sales I've been developing a report in the dev environment. I have my own copy of the food sales semantic model, and I've been working on this food sales and have completed this food sales report. Now what I want to do is deploy. I want to clone or copy that report over to the production workspace and point it to or attach it to the production food sales semantic model. That's my scenario. So what Semantic Link Labs does so eloquently is provides this clone report function. And that clone report function is basically a wrapper function around this clone reporting groups API call. And it takes a few parameters. It takes the name of the report that I want to copy or clone, the name that I want to give that cloned report after I clone it and move it, the workspace in which that report exists, the workspace in which I want to clone it to, the name of the data set or semantic model, they're synonymous, I want to attach it to, and the workspace in which that data set or semantic model resides. Now down here in my code cell, I reference this report senpai labs.report library, and I'm calling the clone report function. I pass in I can pass in the names of these parameters, and I can give them the names of the items that I want to attach them to, are the names of the items that for each of these parameters. What's two things to observe here? There is no authentication going on. Well, there is authentication going on. I'm not having to do it explicitly. It's automated because it's passing my user credentials, so there's no setup of the API call. The other thing that's really I personally find particularly user-friendly is that I can reference these reports by their names. I don't have to go look up their GUIDs. So I can click on this, and within a few seconds, that report has been successfully cloned. And let's go check our prod workspace. We can now see there is a food sales report now in the prod workspace. And if I go over here to this lineage view, I can check and confirm, validate that this food sales report is attached to the food sales semantic model that resides in my demo prod workspace. So that's a really, again, the goal here for this first demo was just to give you an idea of how to create a notebook, a little bit of an introduction to a notebook, how to set up, just install the libraries that you might need, and then basically run a simple function. You can see, just showing you how simple this can be. You don't need to know a lot of Python, you don't need to know. Notebooks can be fairly straightforward to run. Are there any questions about this so far?
Yeah, this is Doug. Just a quick question. I guess the so what of this is that because I just did the same just the other day with Power BI, where I connected to another semantic model. I mean, it's trivial to do inside Power BI, but this what makes it easier. So if someone didn't know with the notebook, the idea is to what? Keep it to where it's easy. If you didn't know where the semantic model was located, you'd have a notebook here that would guide you to that. You wouldn't have to go and think about where to find it. Is that the so what? That the notebook just makes it easier to find the semantic model that you might want to link to?
It could make it easier to automate some tasks around that. I mean, the maybe the more powerful use case for this kind of an endpoint here, to kind of in terms of like rebinding reports, would be if you've got maybe dozens, maybe more than dozens of reports all tied to a kind of a master semantic model that exists somewhere within your environment, and you wanted to kind of swap that out. You've got a new version of your semantic model. You didn't really want to replace the one that's already there, but you wanted to kind of repoint a whole bunch of reports that are tied to a model. An endpoint like this could help you accomplish that. The alternative to that right now would be opening up each of those reports individually in Power BI Desktop and then changing the connection back to the master semantic model. So again, it's an example of something that that you can typically accomplish on a very manual basis using kind of the out of the box functionality within either Power BI portal or Power BI Desktop. But the code level access here gives you the ability, more so as an administrator, as a developer, to do things kind of at a bulk level.
Yeah, gotcha. That makes total sense. That use case is perfect. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll hand it off to Gary. It's going to show you some more like robust solutions, some use cases for this.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump over to my laptop and share mine here real quick. So I've got another notebook here as well. And I want to talk through maybe more specifically around some kind of governance scenarios. So I talked a little bit about doing some things at bulk, kind of at a bulk level. So we'll go through a situation or a scenario along those lines. So my package starts, very similar. You're going to see this in most. Well, you're going to have these first couple of steps in just about every package you do, or you're going to install that lab. I've already run a few of these, so I'll just jump ahead here. Here's an example of a real simple command where we're just going to run and get a list of all the workspaces. So there are two types of approaches you can go at here. You can run this admin endpoint, which again assumes that you have kind of that Fabric admin or Power BI admin role within your environment. So if that's you and you have that level of access across the entire tenant, then you can see every workspace in your environment. And this would include all of the workspaces that you create, as well as what they call kind of the personal workspaces that every licensed user gets assigned within your environment. So that's a great way, just to, again, from an inventory standpoint, just trying to figure out what's out there, right? You can just show all the workspaces. Again, since I'm an admin, I get to see everything. If you're not an admin or don't have those permissions, or even just want to see the ones that are just assigned, or that you just have permissions to specifically, there's a similar endpoint. I think it just removes the admin and it'll list the workspaces that you are a user in. So it gives you kind of a high level, and that's just an idea of at a high level what you can get into areas. You might imagine you could kind of expand beyond that. As you get into workspaces, you could list all the reports or list all the semantic models. We have a series of notebooks that do a kind of a full inventory of a Power BI environment to give organizations an idea of just kind of what's there, so that they can kind of track that over time. But I want to jump into a scenario that talks about an endpoint here that's a little bit more involved, and that's called the business process analyzer, the BPA.
Best practice.
Best practice. I'm sorry, moving that around. The best practice analyzer. And what that what that does is in here again, you can run this in a couple different methods here. We're going to run it on an individual basis. So we pointed it to a specific data set or semantic model within a workspace. And this is a tool that is available, I think, in Tabular Editor. I think or no, maybe it's in DAX Studio. But it's kind of grown out of that. And what it allows you to do is it will look at a semantic model and apply a series of best practice rules, or I should say, evaluate it against a series of best practice rules, and then give you a little report, tells you what you might need to update, fix, etc. So I've run it against a little sample model that I have out here, and you can see it's pretty robust in terms of what it gives you back. It's set them up in 4 different categories here, and with each category, you kind of see, that it's complaining that there's an unqualified reference in one of our measures is actually an X, kind of an error thing. And then you get a bunch of warnings and kind of informational topics as well. You can customize the best practice analyzer to kind of apply the rules that you wanted to apply, or maybe to ignore some of these others. But I kind of wanted to walk through a scenario where we ran the analyzer against our data set, and we looked down through here, and some of these are going to be more important than others, but I'm going to pick on a specific one here where I've got a measure that's been created, and it doesn't adhere to the naming conventions that I want in my model. In this case, it's got the first letter of the object is lowercase, so it's complaining that it needs to be capitalized. You see the name of the measure here is total _ sales. That's probably kind of a database related or originated name for a measure. In Power BI, we'd like to kind of create friendlier names that are a little more user friendly. So we're going to change that. What we're going to do here is we've identified it here in the BPA. We're going to change the name of that here in a second, but I just wanted to show you briefly kind of what that returns. And again, you can run this. We've run it for an individual model now. There are also some endpoints down here that'll run it in bulk. So I can run it across an entire workspace. I can run it across multiple workspaces if I want to give it a list of workspaces, maybe all your production workspaces you want to run it against. And then you could even run it across your entire tenant if you're really adventurous and want to see how long that takes. For larger tenants, that could take a little time. The difference there is when you run the bulk command, rather than outputting it to what's in Python, what is called a data frame, which is kind of like a temp table that gets output to the screen. When you run it in bulk mode, it actually creates a table for you in your in a lake house within Fabric. For those that are familiar, a lake house is, you can think of it as a database. There's a little more to it that we're not going to have time to get into today. But essentially, it writes that data to a database table that you could then query. So if you're running it for multiple models, you'll get a big chunk of data out. I'm not going to run through that example, at least not quite yet. So we've got the name of that. Let's actually walk through one other example as well. One of the other things that you can do here is you can update the descriptions within your model. Gary alluded to this one earlier. The descriptions for columns, probably not as important. Columns, I think, are typically fairly, at least if you've done your homework on the Power BI side, the name of a column is fairly straightforward. But the ones that this becomes really useful in are for your DAX measures. You create calculations that says maybe how your organization defines net revenue, or a year-over-year growth calculation, how that really is calculated. From an end user perspective, they will see the name of that calculation within your model, but there's not, unless you provide that description, there's very little way for them to understand kind of the inner workings of exactly what that calculation may be calculating. So it's useful to provide descriptions, not only for the end user, but this becomes more useful now as we move into the Copilot area. Copilot uses those descriptions too to understand, to better understand your model and how it's calculating various measures as well. So those measures are becoming more and more important, or the measure descriptions rather. And there's an endpoint here that allows you to update your own descriptions or set your own descriptions or update those or create them, I should say. So this one's fairly straightforward. Again, it goes on a very individual basis. So we're identifying a specific data set and a specific workspace, and even down to a specific measure. And then here we're going to give it the description we want. Again, you can write some iterative code in Python that would go through and figure all that out. A more interesting application here is an endpoint that they've recently made available that will generate measure descriptions for you. This actually uses Copilot to feed in the DAX calculations for each of these measures. It feeds them into a Copilot model so that Copilot can kind of evaluate the DAX and kind of figure out what it's doing, and then it outputs and generates descriptions for each of your measures in plain English. So that one's really useful and valuable, and really helps prep models for AI. So I'd encourage everyone, and they're starting to build more of this functionality into Power BI. So you might even see Power BI kind of subsume some of these in the portal. But that's a functionality that I think is very valuable here. And again, you can this one in this case, I'm pointing it to a data set and a specific workspace again. But again, you could point that to every data set within your workspace or across workspaces. Again, just highlighting how with some of the code-based approaches here, we can do that kind of at scale, as opposed to having to go through each of our individual semantic models or data sets and update these descriptions kind of one by one. But let's get back to the little example I had on the measure name. We're going to get into a little bit of code, because this gets a little bit more involved here in terms of what it's doing. But the idea behind it is we've run the best practice analyzer. It's identified the name of a column that we want to change, and we're going to update it here in the model within the code here. So certainly you can go in and you can do this on a one-off basis in Power BI desktop. And so the power of this really becomes if you've got a series of measures, maybe kind of named in this format, and you wanted to convert them to, maybe in this case, we just simply converting the first letters to uppercase and removing the underscore kind of thing. But what it's going to do here is it's going to connect to the model. It's going to find the specific table that we care about. It's going to find the old name for this. It's going to create a new name, and we actually can't update or change the name. What we do is we end up creating a new measure. So it just kind of gets all the metadata from that measure, removes the old measure, and then creates a new one. And I'm thinking that I grabbed the wrong name there. Just let me double check that. I think I wanted to do, total sales, not all sales. So but you can imagine here again, if we could set this up and kind of loop through maybe a dozen measures or more in this way, that this could be pretty powerful. So we just run that code real quick. It adds it to the model. Now the challenge here is, and you're going to see it here in just a second. No, actually, I already had it down here. Sorry, I had another code block that did that. Oh, I guess I already ran it. So the challenge when you change a name in Power BI, as you guys have probably run into, is that when you actually have reports that reference that total underscore sales measure, and now I've just changed the name of it to total sales with capital letters and spaces, all the reports that are looking for that are going to break. And that can be a real problem. And that's really kind of a hindrance for us if we want to implementing best practices across the board. Someone's created that at some point, and then people took off with it and created a bunch of reports. Now we'd really like to go and clean things up, but we've just decided that the effort was not worth the kind of the payback there, because of all the downstream interaction with that measure. But we have a way to get around that as well within some code here. So we're going to look and we're going to go through and find all the reports that have referenced that semantic model, our sales dashboard semantic model in this case. So that's the first step here. We're just going to run a little bit of code that says go find all of the reports for this workspace and for this workspace. I'm sorry, all the reports in the data sets. And it's going to kind of just loop through and find them all here. So let's just run that real quick, and you'll see that we've got a reference in 3 different reports. It looks like it's what it found in looking at the environment. We can take that set then and then go through each, and essentially we're going to do kind of a find and replace. We're going to go through the underlying JSON that defines those reports, go through each, and we're just going to look for the old name and replace it. So we're going to look for that old total sales, and we're going to replace it with the total sales with a space in it. Again, as you might have inferred here, every Power BI report is really just a big JSON file behind the scenes. And so we can really just kind of go through, interrogate it at that level, go through and find references to that old measure and then replace it with the new. And it should do that. It looks like it goes pretty fast in going through each of those. Again, just another example of how you can do this. Again, the alternative here in either the portal or in Power BI Desktop would be to go find each of the associated reports. And in this case, it's just 3, but it could easily be a dozen or more, and have to go through and manually kind of find not just every report, but you'd have to go through every visual in each of those reports and figure out which ones reference total underscore sales and make the change to total sales. That can be extremely tedious, as you might imagine. Here with a little bit of scripting, we can go through it kind of at a tenant-wide basis and find all the reports that are associated with it and do it at scale. So we've just gone through and we've replaced all the fields in the old JSON. And then we're just going to do a quick update of those reports, and it should go through each of those items one by one. It should tell us here that it found the sales dashboard report and it successfully updated that one. Like there's 3 of them it's going to go through. And so now if we launch those same reports again, which by the way, here's another kind of useful function where you can actually just look at the reports in line here. And so we've got those same simple reports we looked at earlier that were failing because it had a reference to total sales. Now it's replaced those and they're all working again. So again, hopefully everyone can see some utility for an approach like this. And again, this is just kind of a simple example. Then one other thing is we kind of finished up there. We did talk briefly about kind of running that at bulk. When you do that, it creates a table in your in the associated lakehouse here. I can show you what that looks like here real briefly. If there's a lakehouse, you'll need to make sure a lakehouse is created here. We've got a demo one here, but this is the model BPA results. So it takes everything that we saw in that output previously and just puts it in columnar format. You're going to get to see the name of the data set was in here somewhere. There's a food sales data set as an example, another one in that same workspace. But it logs everything here. So all those warnings or information or errors about individual things, that's all in a big table that's stored here in your lakehouse. And so you can add to that every time you run it. It puts a timestamp on it, so you can kind of trend those things over time. If you wanted to see how, if you ran it, then made your developers aware of a bunch of changes, and they came back with an updated version that they said fixed, then you can run it again, and you can do a comparison potentially to say that they removed 15 of the 30 errors, et cetera. That's something that would be possible here with the data set that's being collected. Additionally, though, they've got a couple of additional endpoints here that will take that data set and turn it into a semantic model. So this is, behind the scenes, what it's doing here is it's creating a semantic model from code, essentially, which is something that you can do if you want to get it to that level. In this case, it's already kind of built out for you because it understands what that source data table is going to look like. So it builds a semantic model for us, And then it'll even go as far as creating a report for us as well. Now, again, this only works for this specific BPA output, this best practice analyzer output, because again, the definition of that source data is defined. It's not a generic endpoint that's going to automatically create a semantic model out of any data set. Unfortunately, there's quite a bit more that's going on behind the scenes there, but it does create a model for this specific data set. So all the work that would typically go on within Power BI Desktop is done within a single line of code here. It pulls in that data in that database, or sorry, that source table. It creates some measures and things like that. And then it creates a report on top of that as well. I've already run these, so we don't have to wait a minute or so for them to run. But back in your workspace, you'll see then a model. There it is. Model BPA is the semantic model it creates. It's a very simple semantic model, as you might imagine. It's just one source table that comes in, but then it also automatically creates this report from code. And so you get this kind of with just that single line as well. So you can kind of interact with this and, start to see all those things kind of visualized here. And you can kind of come in and drill into a specific workspace, or I'm sorry, specific semantic model. And then you kind of see those are the four categories that we saw in that previous breakdown between the expressions and formatting, et cetera. You can get all the way down to an individual item here. So all that data is available. It pulls it into a nice semantic model and report for you to visualize. Last thing I want to touch on briefly was a similar approach to collecting information. So that's kind of your metadata, maybe around your semantic models themselves. There's another similar tool that's called the Vertipack Analyzer. This is also something that's been available through DAX Studio in the past, if anyone's familiar with that tool. But this allows you to point the analyzer here at a specific data set, and it generates a number of outputs as well. This is really useful for optimization. When you're looking at your model's getting too big or it's performing poorly, and you want to look at kind of what's going on within the model itself. What are your big columns? What are your big tables? Things like that. So you can see at the summary level, you can kind of see the size of your model. You can also see which tables are taking up the most space, and what the row counts of each of those tables are. As we try to optimize Power BI models, one of the things we're typically doing is looking for columns that have high cardinality, meaning that there are a lot of unique values within each column. Of course, most of your tables are going to need at least one kind of identifier column that's going to have really the same cardinality as the number of rows that you have in. But if you look at go down to kind of the column level, you can see that within the 9,000 or so rows in fact sales, we've got about 4,500 unique order sales amounts in there, which isn't surprising. That's going to be a value that you have a lot of unique values for. But this would allow you to kind of go through and you can kind of see the percentage of space it's taking up, identify some of those columns. An example of one that a lot of times gets stuck into let's say like a customer table is like an address field. If you're not using address within your model to visualize the data, it's probably taking up a lot of space. It's probably a real high cardinality column, and it's probably a fairly wide column as well. So it's probably going to take up a lot of space in your model. This may help you identify that. This can run in a very similar fashion to the best practice analyzer, where you can run it on an individual basis and then take a look at the output here. And then you could also run this. I think I've got an example down here at the end that runs it on I guess I didn't do that one in here. But you can also run this where it will output to tables within that lakehouse as well. And I think you may have seen those when I popped over there a minute ago. Rather than sticking the results here into a single table, it creates 6 or 7 different tables. But this could be very useful information in terms of just kind of keeping track of your models and the size and the growth of those models. It's not uncommon to start with a model that's very manageable in size, and then either over time it grows and becomes a little more unwieldy, or maybe someone makes a change to it and they've added a new table to it or a new column that's really good, kind of blows up the size. you can run something like this and maybe even run it on a scheduled basis that would then track those things over time, and you could just have a little more information from a troubleshooting standpoint. So I think we're about out of time. We save a few minutes for questions. Is there anything that has come up? Any questions anyone has? Again, the idea here was just really to kind of expose you to some of the capabilities that these kind of approaches, kind of script-based approach, may grant you.
I have a quick question. So out of all because there's a lot of different use cases. So, but from your guys' point of view, since you guys are doing the demo, out of all of the use cases you said, what are like the top 3 that you find to be or this most useful in?
We use it a lot for kind of the inventory capabilities, be able to navigate through an entire tenant and see all the workspaces, all the reports, all of the semantic models, et cetera. But from a kind of a day-to-day standpoint, I think just some of the ability to identify those reports that are tied to semantic models and make changes on kind of a bulk level, like we showed in a couple of examples there. It's really maybe the most powerful, I think, and maybe most useful kind of on a day-to-day basis as we think about how organizations use Power BI.
Awesome.
But again, mileage is going to vary. I would encourage you to kind of look through, and Gary's got the link down there to the documentation that shows all 300 plus endpoints. They're kind of grouped into a couple of different categories, so you can kind of just scan through and see if there's anything that kind of catches your eyes in terms of maybe solving a problem that you've run into or maybe even didn't know you had.
Absolutely. Yep. Much appreciated.
And then in terms of how to get started with some of this stuff, Gary just listed a few things. Again, you still need that fabric capacity, but if you have questions, first of all, there's good documentation out on that site with that link that was up on the screen there a moment ago. But if you have any questions about how to get started, how we can help automate some of these governance tasks, please reach out. We can either do that. We frequently offer clients what we call just kind of lunch and learn sessions, or just education sessions where we can come spend an hour with you and kind of walk through a specific use case or kind of some ideation, if you want to think of it that way. And then if you want to expand a little beyond that, we have what we call a Fabric Jumpstart offering that is typically a 3 or 4 week kind of engagement where we can come in and knock out an initial use case, usually fairly quickly. So I thank everyone for your time today. I think we got a couple quick poll questions up to kind of wrap up. If you have any other questions, we can still hang around for another couple minutes. Otherwise, I think you've got email addresses from us on the meeting request to either Gary or I directly, or if you want to reach out to your Covenant client manager. We're always happy to help wherever we can.